have not been to Minnesota in probably 20 years.
Bring gas. Welcome to Flagrant Howls, a Minnesota Timberwolves lifestyle podcast.
All right, he's back. He's Kyle Theige. He is the straw that stirs the drink. The Timberwolves are 2-0 since the lineup change that we all begged for. Life is good. They're going to Orlando tonight here, but good to see you, Kyle. I think it's the first time we've potted together in like 2.5 weeks here, so happy to be back on with you, buddy.
I know we can't say it anymore, but Happy New Year. I think that, and when did Larry David say? Is that the 6th?
3rd or the 4th?
Okay. Well, happy week then. New Year. Ross and I were holding it down while you were gone, but yeah, did you ever watch Chappelle's Show?
Yeah.
I probably not a great timing to bring up the making the band skit they did with P. Diddy, but remember that part where he would just like constantly shut down the studio? Like, I'm shutting down the studio again, and then you had to go get a left-handed set of golf clubs. That's kind of how this Wolves stuff has been. I was listening to you and Dex and Judd on Monday for State of the Wolves, and one week it's like really good, and then the next week it's like, are they going to trade everyone and burn it down? So this is a good week. Sun is out. This is a good week for the Timberwolves.
There's a bunch of things, and we're gonna introduce a new segment here officially, the Motor City Minute, where we also keep an eye on that Detroit Pistons pick that looks like it might convey. And so we'll stay tuned for that and a random Wolf of the week here. Before we do anything, I just want to shout out our friends at Bricksworth, which is just an outstanding place to grab a beer and some dry rub wings and maybe some Detroit-style pizza in honor of the Motor City Minute. Bricksworth in the North Loop, which is a great spot within walking distance of Target Center for pregame, for postgame, for away games. They've got the game on TV, almost certainly. They've got the signature Nas Reed Hazy IPA as well. My wife and I, it's funny, we discovered Bricksworth we moved back from Seattle to Minneapolis almost 2 years ago, Super Bowl Sunday 2 years ago. And as we were going back into the North Loop for the first time, like, let's see what the new places are. And we just kind of stumbled into Bricksworth and had Cool Ranch Dorito dry rub wings in Detroit-style pizza. And we were like, this right here is why we moved. This is the food that we moved back for. So Bricksworth in the North Loop. Check them out. The OG location in Burnsville, too, helping to power Flagrant Howls here. But so I love Anthony Edwards and Donte DiVincenzo playing next to each other more often. I love that they're starting together. I love that you are empowering this guy that was I think he was the centerpiece of that trade with the Knicks, and that he's under contract for 3 seasons. Super slow start for him. He's been a slow starter as a shooter the last 3 years. But dude, like their energy seems to play off each other. They can both pull up from 32 feet if you give them a little bit of space. They both play with swag. They're both kind of dogs. And so there might be another move or two. Maybe they tweak. Maybe they lose 3 more games in a row, and I'm just bitching about this next week. But at its core, I love Anthony Edwards plus Donte DiVincenzo in the starting lineup. Go from there. What did you make of the Wolves finally tweaking their starting lineup?
I mean, it was necessary, right? Because the 5-man lineup stuff, I think that starting lineup was the second most used 5-man lineup in the league behind what the Knicks are doing, and Tibbs is just running those guys into the ground a little bit. But it was necessary, but also I think Finch spun it in a way, and I would imagine, and this has kind of come out a little bit, but I would imagine it was a collaborative thing where it's like he was like, hey, Mike, would you do this? And Mike's like, actually, this might be better for me because it's just not working. I continue to believe Mike Conley is the number 1 most affected player by having Julius Randle on the team, because Julius takes, he just has the ball in his hands a lot more, and that's what they needed Mike for last year was like, all right, Mike, you're the table setter. You kind of keep things organized. Well, like it or not, that's what they're trying to do more with Julius now. So having Mike in the second unit allows him to be a little more of, he's one of the best point guards to really ever play. He's been doing it for a really long time. So I really like that. But on the Donte thing, when I watch Donte DiVincenzo play with Anthony Edwards, Phil, it reminds me of those little things you would see where it's like you have $15 and like 30 people have dollar amounts, And it's like you have to build this perfect lineup with $15.
Like Randy Moss is the top one.
Yep.
And like Jalen Naylor is in the bottom section or something. Right?
Like Ant's a $5 player, right? Mm-hmm. I think DiVincenzo is probably like $1 or $2. I don't know. And again, I have Timberwolves colored glasses on, but if you like scattered the league and you forget about contracts, even though Donte's contract is so valuable because it's like $10, $12 million a year, I don't know how many guys as role players fit next to Ant when you take all encompassing, right? Like not only the fact, like you said, he can hit anything from 32 feet. He can handle the ball. He had like 9 rebounds the other night. I think maybe against the Clippers or the Pelicans. Like he digs in, which is something this team really needs. Because even Jaden for a while, it's like, dude, get back in there and crash the board. So, and then on top of that, you hear these video snippets coming out randomly where Ant keeps calling him twin. I think just their mentalities align really well. I think that is the perfect player to put next to Ant. He's not a traditional point guard. I still think that would be Rob moving forward. I really want to see Rob come back from this injury and get some time, but I just think Ant and Donte DiVincenzo are cut from the same cloth, and having those two guys together helps the spacing, helps, again, just Ant have more fun. We're a week removed from Ant being like, I'm not having fun playing that style of basketball, and then he just went off and scored 100 points in 3 games, whatever, but I think DiVincenzo is the prize of that trade, a trade that still doesn't look super good just because of how Carl's playing compared to maybe how Julius is playing. But Donte signed long-term, cheap contract, perfect way to build in this new CBA. And we can do it later, but that pick is kind of valuable all of a sudden because it does seem like as of the 9th of January, it's going to convey.
Yeah, and I think there's also just a human element to the DiVincenzo thing that was easy to either ignore or not dig deeper on. That this trade happens. It happens a few weeks before the season, comes out of nowhere. He sat there for months, fired up to play with his Nova guys, I'm sure. Mm-hmm. He's living in New York. He's making millions of dollars, living in some badass flat in New York City or whatever, right? Like he probably loved his situation. And then he gets traded. New city, new teammates, fans are at best 50-50 on the trade, if not just resentful of the Timberwolves for trading this 9-year franchise stalwart. So he comes in, all of that. He starts slow. He's kind of miserable. He's trying to figure out a new city, all this stuff, right? And also, he's coming off the bench in part for these political reasons. Right? Well, Julius has to start. And Jaden deserved to be a starter based on his play last year. But he's coming off the bench. And this is a dude that 4 or 5 years ago, he was a starter for the bulk of the season and the start of the playoffs for a championship Bucks team. Now, he got hurt against the Heat in that first round. And so they went on to win the championship without. But to start that playoff run for the Bucks, that dude was a starter with Giannis and with Middleton, all those dudes, right? And then he goes to Golden State. And he's plopped down at the end of this dynasty. And he started a huge chunk of that season with Steph, Clay, and Draymond. Then he goes to New York, and he starts almost the entire season on a 50-win Knicks team that's making noise in the playoffs. He's hitting one of the biggest shots of the playoffs in that game against the Sixers, right? So starter, Milwaukee, Golden State, New York, and now he's coming off the bench for 25 minutes with the Timberwolves. And so, I don't know, like, all of that stuff, and then him getting off to a slow start. I love that he's heating up. I love that they've leaned into him. Energize him, empower him, start him, and make him a focal point of this team. And by the way, if you're Chris Finch and you were worried about, boy, if we make a change to the starting lineup and it doesn't work, or if guys get pissed, then what? Well, you're 2-0, small sample size. I think this gives you permission to tinker. Like, this was a team that was flat. You tinkered. It worked, at least in the short term. You can tinker more now. You have permission to tinker more if you're Finch and company.
Torian Prince told me this a couple of years ago when they were out here in Portland for those kind of back-to-backs. We were just talking about, like, not on the record, but just, like, what it's like to be a basketball player or whatever. And he had this line where he's like, when it comes down to it, it's like, my job and your job are the exact same. I just make way more money than you. I was like, well, that's rude. You don't even know how much I make. Yeah. But I think Torian Prince was making $10 million at the time. So on this, like, I know...
Candace Hoopus, okay? We've been building this thing for quite a while, all right?
You know how many blogs I did? I know people don't like to hear that stuff, and even I sometimes can kind of roll my eyes a little bit and be like, man, you're making $10 million a year. Like, is it really that hard to, charter a plane from New York to Minnesota and find a nice condo to rent or whatever? But I remember Mike Conley said those same things when he got traded for D'Lo, and then, like, they had a couple games they lost, I think, to the Wizards right before the All-Star break, and Mike's like, it's just been a whirlwind. Like, I got a family and stuff, and I know it's not an excuse, but So I do think some of that stuff affected Donte, and he's actually been open about it, like post-game, being like, yeah, it took me a while to just, I was pissed off at the Knicks. Like, you saw that whole thing where he kind of had that dust up with Brunson's dad when they played in the preseason. So I think he's really comfortable now. I do think he's more comfortable starting. I still don't super care about who starts. I'm way more concerned with, and you're seeing this now, something that we have gotten on Finch about. Finch has pretty much opened the fourth quarter to like, I'm going to play matchups. And that's really good. That's what you should do as a coach.
Yes.
So he's closing with different lineups. I think that's really good. I know you had like an event for Purple Daily, but did you watch the end of that Pelicans game the other night?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay, because I've been obviously a Finch fanatic.
And it got a little squirrely there, missing an alley-oop and then trying to thread the needle behind his back in a bad spot.
I don't think Chris Finch has been perfect this year. I have continued to say I think it's his worst year coaching, but I still hold him in high regard for all the stuff he does, and I still think he's a really good coach. But there have been issues. I mean, he even called a timeout in that game where it's like, that's
nice
good.
job.
It worked.
Yeah.
Like, it worked. But if they lose that game, fire Finch is like the hashtag. And I just want to remind people sometimes, like, that's kind of the ingredients Finch is dealing with. This team, like, comes out flat in the third. He calls the timeout like we're all telling him to do. Chris Hine reported he was there, that he just screamed at him. They come out, they figure it out, they play good basketball, and now the game is pretty much clinched. But holy bleep, did they do everything in their power to lose that game by like, hey, let me just throw an alley-oop when I could kill the clock.
Yeah.
Let me try to and-one split these two guys. Like, not everything that Chris Finch is telling them always translates to the court, and some of these guys just need to be. I mean, that would have been such a bad loss. It was ultimately a good win, and now they're 2-0 with a new starting lineup. But just sometimes, like sometimes the coach just needs to be better, and sometimes, man, it's the coach can tell you exactly what to do. Like, hey, there's 41 seconds left. We have 24 seconds on the shot clock. We're up 5. Just kill the clock. And Julius is like, basically the Leroy Jenkins meme of like, well, bleep it, let me just throw an oop to Ant. It's like, no, don't do that. But good win overall. And again, now they're kind of on, right, a trajectory up. They beat a Clippers team that returned Kawhi. They beat a Pelicans team that returns Zion. No Paulo tonight.
No Paulo tonight. Okay.
Just like as we're recording this, they say he's coming back tomorrow. But the Magic you're not going to know 90% of the guys the Magic are playing tonight. Like, there's no Jalen Suggs. But they should, I think they're like 5-point favorites again. So they should continue to kind of stack wins as, again, the Western Conference just ebbs and flows with teams having good weeks and bad weeks.
The only thing, I know you kind of mentioned that it's not as much about the starting lineup. It's kind of how do you navigate the rest of the game in the fourth quarter. But where I was getting just fed up to my wit's end with the starting lineup is, and the numbers bear this out too, it was far more likely that you were going to be down by 8 or down by 10. If you were break even, it was a win with that starting lineup. But it was more likely you would be in an 8-point hole or a 10-point hole or worse when you started subbing in the backup unit, as opposed to being up by like 15 or 16. Your starting lineup should give you a chance once every 3 or 4 games, especially with a talented team like this, to just be like up by 13 points at the end of the first quarter. And last year, it felt like that was the case once they started really gelling after the first year with Gobert. It's like, oh, the Timberwolves have the ability to just be up 31-17 on someone in the first quarter. And so now it's like, more often than not, you're losing at the end of the first rotation. And then we expect that the awesome bench unit's going to come in and make it all up. But that's a ton of pressure to put on those guys. They're not going to do it every single night when you're down by 8 points. So I don't know. That's my last thing on the starting lineup. Is I don't even know that this is the final iteration of like the best starting 5, but it feels like it makes more sense. And the fact that Conley's on board, if not just flat out like pushing it and endorsing it, to me, like of all the dudes you might have to worry about upsetting with egos or politics, he's like the last guy on that list.
Yeah,
he's going to be a head coach if he wants to be at some point, or at least on a bench as an assistant. I think he gets it. So that's my last point. Give yourself a chance to score like 35 points and be up by 12 when your subs check in, and hope that they can hang on to it.
And again, Chris Finch should have just done this 10 games ago. Like that was, I mean, I was still the guy in October that was like, hey, it's okay to like stumble out of the gates a little bit if you're just trying a bunch of stuff and playing 10-man rotations. And they stumbled out of the gates and did the complete opposite, right? Like we're just sticking to the 8 starter mentality, and the same starting lineup. So yeah, in that game against the Pelicans, the new look starting lineup featuring Donte DiVincenzo came out of the gates hot. But now that bronze lineup, as Dane Moore calls it, with like Julius and 4 bench guys, gets tweaked a little bit and it looks different. And then that bench unit actually gave up the lead. So I enjoy, and I don't know how much you can do over the next, 48 to 50 games, but I enjoy tinkering, not completely like just, Jim Pete continues to tell me, it's like you can't just jerk guys in and out of starting lineups because there is not only politics, but like a mental side of it. But I think that move should have happened 10 games ago, but I'm just glad it did because I just think more shooting out there. It does put a little bit more pressure on Ant. I think you're going to see teams again, even like Orlando tonight, probably pressure Donte a lot because these teams are looking at the Wolves as like, you guys don't really have a point guard that at least starts. So that's why I come back to the Rob Dillingham thing is like at some point, if Ant isn't shooting 90% on catch and shoot threes and filling it up with, 35 a game, he's going to need more offense next to him. Donte can only do so much. I think Rob is a big part of that. But for now, it's just a more fun product to watch. You're getting more Rudy Gobert, right? Like 6 blocks the other night against the Pelicans. So again, trending up. Winnable game tonight against the Magic, and then I think they return home for maybe a Grizzlies game. So yeah, a good week in Wolves land after last week was pretty nasty.
The turnover thing, yeah, like the sloppy ball handling is so right now the Wolves are 26th in the league in turnover rate, so just like percentage of possessions that result in a turnover. It's them. The Grizzlies are down there. The Grizzlies are like what, third in the West, whatever, or fourth in the West. I want to say third. And then you got some bad teams like the Blazers and the Jazz are in there. But it's funny if you look at the 3 best turnover prevention teams, the 3 teams that turn the ball over the least in the NBA. This might as well just be a reflection of who the best teams in the league are. Thunder, Celtics, Cavaliers turn the ball over the least amount of times. So yeah, until these lineup tweaks are great, but like right now, the only actual point guard you have in your rotation is Mike Conley, who is being diminished a little bit. But yeah, we're both kind of interested. Do we have any idea on Dillingham with the ankle? Is he close? Is this going to be lingering for a few more weeks?
They had like a press release they sent us recently.
But it was like he's going to be reevaluated in like a week or something. It was kind of a non-news.
Yeah, I always hate those because I'm always scarred by when they're like, Josh Okogie's cramping. And it's like, actually, he tore his hamstring off the bone.
It's like Dillingham is still breathing. He's alive, and we will update you in a week or something.
I might have this wrong, but I think I'm right. It is weird. This is like this. I mean, when you roll an ankle, like it kind of, you constantly have, it seems like when I was playing, like you would have more ankle rolls. People that have sprained ankles, it's like it becomes more likely you do it again. But I think it's like the second time he's done it in practice. Like he's not sustaining these ankle rolls or injuries like in games. I know some people think Finch is like pushing him down the stairs, but I don't think that's happening. But I do.
He did that with Terrence Shannon Jr., but not Dillingham.
Yeah. So I just want to see him out there. Again, Josh has obviously gotten an opportunity. It's still pretty much an 8-man rotation, but at least they try to flirt with it. But as much as I like Josh, and he's deserved some minutes here and there, when this thing's whole, I do want to see Rob maybe in that all bench lineup with Julius, because I think that shot making is going to be big. Because again, now that Ant's on this week-long heater after he kind of came out after the Celtics game and said, I don't like playing that way, you're going to start to see again a lot more coverages just flooded his way of 2 on the ball, double teaming, making him trust his teammates. And with Donte out there, you can trust him a little more than Mike from a spacing aspect. But yeah, I just get well soon, Rob Dillingham. We need you.
Yeah. Do you think it's kind of crazy that all the tumultuousness and they did have a 3-game losing streak until the Western Conference Finals last year, and now they have like 4 3-game losing streaks already, and we're not even halfway through January. So all of this stuff, and then you look at the standings, and they're only 2 games back of the 4 seed,
and they're 1.5 games out of the 11 seed. Like we'll be equal on both sides, but as close as it could get to just the wheels falling off this thing, the people below them are the Kings who've already fired their coach, the Suns who. I am still like, I need a 30 for 30 at some point down the road on how the Phoenix Suns got absolutely little brothered in the playoffs by your Minnesota Timberwolves, swept, and then everyone just kind of came back and was like, oh, they're going to be awesome this year. It's like, listen, I like Tyus Jones, but let's not kid ourselves. And they wake up this morning 16-19, and they're literally have benched Bradley Beal. So I don't think I'm concerned about who's below them. But yeah, man, they're 2 games out of the 4 seed. Dallas is without Kyrie and Luka right now. The Lakers and Clippers have a lot going on the court, and I can't even imagine with all the stuff going on in LA with the fires off the court. So it is wide open. But again, that's why all you need to do is string together, like the Wolves have, one good week, and you can find yourself, up there in the 4th or 5th spot.
Yeah, they've got, and they're the schedule's kind of loaded here coming up. So you get Orlando tonight, and you're playing every other day through January 17th. Then you get the back-to-back. So it goes Orlando tonight, day off, Memphis at home, day off, Wizards on the road, day off, home against Golden State. So this stretch where you go home against Golden State, day off, and then a back-to-back at the Knicks, and then the next night home against the Cleveland Cavaliers are on pace for 70 wins. And you had that showdown against Oklahoma City last night. And then a day off at Memphis. So this it's a beefy part of the schedule, sans maybe like Washington in the next few weeks here. And then Orlando, like with all the injuries, go rack up a win there and see what happens. So.
Yeah. Alan Horton had this, that the Wolves played twice within a 10-day span over the NBA Cup. You'll remember that because we're like, well, do we do the update to the top 100 list? So twice in a 10-day span they played, and now they're in a stretch of 19 games in 35 days, which is essentially every other day. And yeah, they play in New York one night and then have to fly overnight to Cleveland. So it does get tougher. I've tried to just stop looking at the schedule because every time I see the Wizards come up, I'm like, oh, that should be an easy win. And then it's going to be like a team meeting after that.
Down by 18, yeah.
So, I'm just one game at a time. Next, we're on to Cincinnati, as Bill Belichick would say. But they do have a nice little advantage here. Memphis is pretty banged up too, even though they're playing really good basketball. Maybe John Morant comes back. But again, it really just comes down to figuring out their rotations. And the thing I've liked the most is that fourth quarter stuff of when they beat the Rockets last week in that big comeback, they closed without Rudy. They closed without Julius. They close without Mike or whatever, maybe without Jaden. So I think they're starting to figure out slowly what is working for them. And it does seem like, you and I love this stuff, the vibes are just better. Because again, after Ant ripped the team after the Kings game, they turned their defense around. And after he kind of ripped the way that they were playing basketball, it seems like they've all kind of turned it around again. So maybe that's just what we're doing every 2 weeks is Ant's going to have a great post-game locker room. But it does seem like they're kind of trajecting slowly up. But 1.5 games out of the 11 spot, it can all kind of crumble if you don't bring it every night.
The good news is with all these games coming up in the next few weeks or so, if you have to expand your rotation to 10, you know that you can put Joe Ingles in for a solid inbound pass, and you'll be fine. Best inbounds pass of the year 2 games ago by Joe Ingles. I think he left the towel around his neck, I'm pretty sure.
Joe Ingles and like a bullpen catcher, 2 best jobs in sports right now because you just get paid really good money to he just wears that Jaden hat and Timberwolves jumpsuits and just drinks like Diet Pepsis. It's like this.
Wave
is
that
awesome.
towel. We should do our next ranking should be the best towel waving players on the Wolves bench in history. Mark Madsen, probably the George Washington on the Mount Rushmore. Joe Ingles really high up there. Really high up.
I say Mark Madsen's like 101 on the draft. He was the best at doing it. But Joe Ingles Joe Ingles loves to push guys after they have a big moment. You'll watch him after
He's
Jaden
very
hits
physical.
a 3.
Yeah.
He'll just push guys. So he's great. And I know it sucks that his kind of career is just ending all of a sudden because he had some cool quotes at Media Day about his family and stuff. But at least they can trust. It's whatever. I can't believe they don't have someone else to throw the inbounds passes. But again, that goes back to throwing alley-oops up 5 with 40 seconds left. I think Finch has guys he trusts. Kyle Anderson, Joe Ingles, Mike Conley amongst them. So maybe one day a young guy will throw it in, but not today.
Before we get to a random Wolf of the Week with producer extraordinaire Ross, are you... Well, on one hand, Tim Connolly operates in the shadows and just kind of comes out of nowhere with his trade. So there is that. But are you a little surprised that with less than 1 month until the trade deadline, there's been zero steam about Julius Randle or any sort of Timberwolves activity? Not even like a wind horse throwing something out, or there's nothing out there.
No. Twofold. One, remember that cat trade? That wasn't even remotely leaked. I think Tim and Matt Lloyd and everyone else in that front office is really airtight about the ways they move. So, and despite loving slop and the Woj bombs of the world, I think that's the best way you want your organization run, is that stuff's just not getting out.
Yeah.
So I think any day you could have a trade. Now, I also think, and people are getting so tired of this, but I do think it's going to be resolved here soon, the ownership stuff is, I think, really affecting this, because until arbitration is settled, it's really Glenn Taylor's team, and owners have to sign off on deals and on moves and stuff, and everyone is in limbo, and we don't talk about it enough. And again, it's not basketball, so everyone's bored of it, and it's been going on for years. But they have to figure that out, because the man who could be trading a player that could opt in this summer might opt out himself in May, right?
Yeah.
And Tim Connolly. So
don't we have I think we have lawyers reconvening tomorrow for like final questions and stuff, and then
I continue to believe it's going to be resolved in January. But again, the trade deadline is February 6th. So one, I don't think it's that concerning or that surprising that you're not hearing stuff, because it's an airtight organization. But two, I think they're just trying to figure out who is making the decisions, and not only about this roster, but long-term payroll and financials and stuff. So I'm optimistic that the ownership stuff will resolve here in the next couple of weeks, and then that will be a domino effect of, if one side wins, I think more people will feel comfortable staying here long-term. But it's all part of this interesting, obviously only the Timberwolves could do this, puzzle of what is the next step. But that Julius thing, I know Dane Moore is going to do a big breakdown on the salary cap tomorrow and stuff, but that Julius Randle stuff, he's the most polarizing player that this team has had since D'Angelo Russell. He's a good basketball player. I don't always know if I like watching him. His teammates, Chris Hine was reporting this too, like it's not nearly as bad behind the scenes. Like his teammates like playing with him and stuff, even if it's, ball stopping and a lot of dribbling the ball. So, but it does affect, and we're going to talk about this tomorrow, like if he were to opt in this summer for that last year of his deal as a player option, it becomes almost impossible to keep both Nickeil Alexander-Walker and Naz Reid. And both those guys at this point, I mean, how do you not look at those guys as equally foundational pieces as like a Jaden, who I know some people have really turned on, but you have this opportunity to re-sign two guys that I think are 24 and 26 or something, or 25 and 26.
I think it's like 20, isn't it? 24, 23 maybe?
I think Nickeil just, everyone has birthdays. I think he just had one, but I know that they're both, Nickeil's 26 and Naz is 25. 26. So,
right, okay.
But those to me are foundational pieces, right? Nickeil Alexander-Walker has completely revamped his career, and you want, a 3-and-D guy like that next to Ant. You want a floor spacing 4 that's the best developmental project story in franchise history. So the Randall thing continues to be a dilemma, because addition by subtraction has been a popular phrase, but if you just take him off the roster, like just take him off in a salary dump to our Detroit Pistons, I mean, I think your team is a little worse, right? Even if you do get to start Naz, you are losing like a productive player.
Well, and size. Like you don't have, I know people are going to say Garza, but someone's got to grab a rebound.
Yeah.
And be able to match up with physical big forwards on other teams too. I do wonder though, like if he's such an enigma, and everyone from Lakers fans to Pelicans fans to Knicks fans we should all just like pour a drink and get into a room and have a therapy session, because he's super talented. He can pass. He can initiate offense. He can dribble. He can shoot some threes. He's kind of streaky in that regard. He can rebound. But it often feels like he's just operating in his own world, while the other four guys are trying to do something sort of symbiotic, and then he's over here doing his Julius thing. Not all the time, but a healthy percentage of the time. But if you did just take him off the team and you said, all right, well, we're going smaller, we're going Terrence Shannon Jr., we're going to sample some more Josh Minott, Rob Dillingham, it's going to be a smaller group of players. Would they be that much worse? Do you think so?
I'm in a great mood this week because the Wolves are playing better, but I don't know how you wouldn't at least think that I think they'd be worse. But again, let's break it down. Is that the worst thing? I continue to believe that whether they admit it or not, like this is looked at as a gap year because you trade Carl, and a lot of the stuff that you and I have talked about is about how it's going to financially affect them down the road. They did not trade Carl thinking we're going to be a better team without him this year. I don't believe that. But
Agreed.
Long term, when you're trying to build this thing up so when Ant hits that age of 27, the Tatum age, everything is as good as it can be around him, then maybe there's still a chance that the trade works out. But, talking to people, I think that's why this has been more frustrating than ever for people because they.
I think you might have unplugged your microphone. So while Kyle plugs his microphone in or pantomimes his point for the audience, I'm going to tell you guys about Park Dental. That's right. I found a new dentist a few months back. I was a dental drifter. My old dentist retired, or he told me he was retiring. I don't know, whatever. But I needed a new dentist, and so Park Dental came. Park Dental, by the way, 50 years of caring for and cleaning teeth in Minnesota and Western Wisconsin, and I'm told they even treat the teeth of some prominent professional athletes in Minnesota. That shall go nameless for now. But if you're looking for a better dental experience, or you're just looking for a new dentist, there's probably a Park Dental location somewhere within very close range of wherever you live or work in the Twin Cities. Go to parkdental.com to schedule your checkup. Parkdental.com. I'm professional podcaster.
My phone
Theige.
just randomly made the weirdest sound ever. I thought it was an earthquake announcement. I was just switching my mic over. And I was cooking there too. I was just trying to say on Julius, if you make the trade because you're saying we need to reset the 5-year plan, and the short term we're going to get worse, I'm totally cool with that. But then we need to be talking about this Julius Randle thing every single day, because you've had a really good term of like a means to an end. Well, the means to the end can't be a 4-year, $160 million extension this summer. Like that can't be it. Otherwise, if you do that, then Nas is out, and it's like, okay, so you really just thought Carl for Julius is pretty much going to work?
No, dude, I think, tell me if I'm wrong on this, but because again, Connolly and people
Tim
are
Connolly's
down on him now.
a great GM, even though he traded someone we love. The trade has not worked. They have lost the trade as of now. As of today, they have lost the trade because one player's playing way better. But, they lost the Rudy Gobert trade 3 months in, and then they won it by a landslide. So I'm with you on this part.
But I don't think he made the trade as a means to an end, like you just put it. I don't think he said, okay, I'm trading Karl Anthony Towns for DiVincenzo, Julius Randle, and a Pistons pick that may or may not convey at some point in the next few years. Final. Boom. End product. This team here as constructed gives us a better chance to win a championship than the one that just went to the Western Conference Finals. I think he made the trade as a to B with C in mind. I don't know what C is, but I think he makes the A to B trade with like 2 or 3 other irons in the fire for trade deadline or next summer to get to a different point to set up this window going into Anthony Edwards' prime. And in the short term, yeah, it sucks for fans because a lot of people loved Cat. He's playing in a great spot offensively with the Knicks. He's putting up crazy numbers. He's taking advantage. He puts it on you in your own arena at Target Center when you run 50 tribute videos for him and all this stuff. It feels terrible. But I think he's thinking 2 or 3 steps ahead every single time throughout his entire career as a Pobo. And I'm wondering what C is. A to B.
Right.
What is C and when does it happen? And what does it look like?
And he has shown a propensity to use up his entire shot clock. Because when they traded for Rudy Gobert a couple summers ago, everyone was like, well, I guess the next logical thing is you extend D'Angelo Russell and then you're good. And he was like, nah, I'm actually not going to do that. And then he waited until the last second. You can go back and look at the Woj bombs. He had the Lakers and the Jazz kind of bent over a little bit in terms of like, you're going to have to give me second round picks as well. Not just like, I'm not just giving. And those second round picks, one of them turned into essentially Leonard Miller, who again, I think is more than ready to not be playing in the G League.
There's some size. Like if you did move Julius Randle, you'd have a 6'10" sort of unicorn G League dominating player.
And I'm with you. I think that's part of the, before my phone crapped out, like I think that's part of the frustrating thing though, is that if it is an ABC means to an end, then what is C and when are you going to evaluate C? And then that goes back to what I said about like, well, ownership might have them all locked right now from making any big transactions, because if he does pick up his option, and Dane's going to explain this to me tomorrow, but like, can you keep Nas? And if you can't keep Nas, then the Carl trade, no matter how well it looks in 2027, like, you got to keep Nas Reed. Even though he's a different player than Carl and different player than Julius, I think he's one of Anthony Edwards' favorite teammates ever. So
then do you almost have to trade Julius before the deadline?
That's why
just to eliminate the risk of him picking up the option. Could you trade him because you swap for like an equal contract or whatever? Like, could you trade him for an actual expiring contract? But then what other components are in play? Who would? There's so many factors. Like, who out there is clamoring for Julius Randle? It would have to be there. What's the other piece of value that's going with him?
But that's why we now pivot into the first ever official. We flirted with this, but first ever official Motor City Minute, because I know for a fact that the Minnesota Timberwolves could call 7 teams tomorrow and be like, here's Julius Randle and this Pistons pick. Will you take him off our hands? I don't think you can do that, because then you go back to, you traded Karl-Anthony Towns for cap flexibility maybe and Donte DiVincenzo. And I think, and you think, he's the prize of the trade, but I also need that pick. And if this team is going to be, I know Finch isn't playing any of the young guys, but I don't think I would just use those assets to get rid of something when now all you have left from Carl is Donte DiVincenzo. I think that pick is actually super valuable, and I would keep it and use it. As of this morning, I think on Tankathon, because of the Rudy Gobert trade, the Wolves are scheduled, as of the 9th, to give the Jazz the 18th pick in the draft. But they're scheduled to get the 15th pick in the draft. Yeah. Which is really good draft.
Lottery. Is it? So explain this to me. That Pistons pick is lottery protected.
Correct.
So it's top 4.
Top 16.
Top 16 protected.
Yep.
So they would have to, and the play-in makes this kind of wonky because, right, if you're a play-in team, they would have to get through. Right now, they'd be in the play-in. They'd be playing a game against the Heat in the 7-8 game. So they'd have to get to the actual 8-team bracket for that pick to convey.
Yeah, look at us being great podcasters. According to Tankathon, it actually says that the Pistons pick is top 13 protected.
Okay.
I should check that. But so that would throw a little wrinkle into what you're saying. I don't think they would have to advance in the plan. I believe, and someone in the comments, like, let us know for idiots on this topic, not just anything. I think if they make the top 10 in the East, that pick would convey to Minnesota. And again, all of a sudden it becomes a really important asset. It's a very good draft coming up by all accounts, not just at the top, but throughout the depth of the lottery. So if the Wolves could add another young piece, and then cue the, well, Finch won't play him anyway jokes, and you have a Rob Dillingham and Terrence Shannon Jr. and Leonard Miller and Josh Minor and all these guys, like, one of those would have to hit, but that's pretty good because these rookie contracts are kind of a cheat code now in the second apron. So that's all just to say that I think this next month or so, a week or a month from this past Monday, it's a big trade deadline for the Minnesota Timberwolves, because you could argue that they're figuring stuff out and you just kind of want to run it with this new starting lineup, maybe one more tweak, more Nas Reed, whatever. But what happens if this summer Julius just says, no one else is going to pay me, I'm picking up that option, you owe me $34 million, and then the Wolves are like, well, now we can't keep Nas Reed. So it's going to be fascinating.
Maybe you could ask him politely, or just hope that like him and his family don't like Minnesota or something. I don't know,
and I think they love Minnesota, so that it's a very and is he playing for a contract right now? Like, I know people want to put Nas into that starting lineup. I'm one of those people, but watch what's happening in Phoenix right now. Obviously, Bradley Beal has a no-trade clause. Julius doesn't have one of those. But it's just going to be a fascinating, even if they play better basketball, Phil, it's going to be fascinating to see what happens this next month because, I still think this franchise is hurt from when Scott Layden just didn't do anything a handful of years ago at the deadline. And the moves that take place in the next 3 or 4 weeks, both in the courtroom and in the front office and on the court, could really affect this thing for like multiple years to come.
So that's your Motor City Minute here on Flagrant Howls. Listen, Tobias Harris, Tim Hardaway Jr.,
Malik
Cade,
Beasley.
Let's go. Malik Beasley launching threes out there. I think he actually led them in scoring against the Nets in a blowout win against the Nets. So let's go Pistons. Let's go. Let's get producer extraordinaire Ross in here to lead us through a random wolf of the week.
Hey, boys.
Ross, what's going on, buddy?
How you doing? That was a great Motor City Minute. I'm looking forward to my next knickknacks when we check in on Cat and the Knicks.
Cat's been hurt for a couple games, right? Tweaked his knee, playing 100 minutes in a game somewhere in there.
But Knicks box scores are just like the weirdest basketball porn for me right now, because I'll be like, oh, the Knicks won by 28, and I'll go look, and they only played 6 guys, and then the seventh guy played 1 minute. It's like, you were up 24 in the fourth. Why didn't Carl sit?
Yeah,
That's Tim's.
Carl, hell, the game at Target Center, that game was over in the second quarter. It was like a 30-point game before halftime. And Carl winds up with 38 minutes or something in a game that was over before halftime. Just don't trust anyone off the bench. All right, Ross. So here's what we have for the random wolf of the week standings. Year number 2, Kyle has 3 wins. I have 2. All time, Kyle has 26. I have 14. The handful of random wolves so far this year: Kevin Garnett, Reggie Jordan, Randy Brewer, Tyus Jones, and Greg Monroe. And Ross gave us a little hint before we cracked the microphones and said that this is a really interesting one, or this is a good one, I think is the way that he put it.
That it is indeed, which in a way is a clue, but I gave it both to you, so there can be no favoritism here. Okay. Are you boys ready?
So you'll throw out clues. No Googling, but we are allowed to at least search for like previous random wolves that we have. You do get one heat check guess. Right. And Kyle is the only one, and he did it very recently on Tyus Jones, to get the heat check guess, which comes after the very first question. Who won the last one? That was you, technically, Phil. I took it down. Greg Monroe. Yep. Yeah, that's right.
So I'll let Kyle do our first heat check after this clue. This random wolf of the week averaged 12.8 points per game during his 13-year NBA career. 12.8 points per game, Kyle, during his 13-year career. Heat check time.
He didn't. Torian Prince. That's not right.
I love that because you just recency bias. You just
brought it was going to be him or Alan Crabb, but Alan Crabb, yeah.
Yeah, no way Alan Crabb got to 12.8 points per game. That is not correct. Phil?
Terry Porter.
Terry Porter's a great guess from a great era of Timberwolves basketball. Not correct. Okay. We move on. This random wolf of the week was named to the All-NBA Rookie First Team. Now, was he a Timberwolf? I don't know. That's up to you guys to figure out. This random wolf of the week was a McDonald's All-American. McDonald's has great coffee, by the way.
Oh.
Complete non sequitur, but it's a good affordable cup of coffee.
Underrated breakfast spot. For like $4, I can get everything I need.
Is McDonald's an underrated breakfast spot? I feel like it's like very highly rated breakfast spot.
Oh, well.
A very famous breakfast spot.
What's our buddy in town's bit, Phil? Overrated, underrated, properly
Chad Hartman,
rated?
Chad
by
the way, one of the great photos of all time. Center court at Target Center.
Yes.
It was when the Celtics were in town. And so Sean Grandy, who did a year as the TV play-by-play guy for the Wolves like 25 years ago. But you had Hartman, longtime radio TV Wolves, and then you had Horton, Jim Pete, Grady, Sean Grandy. Am I forgetting? Kevin Harlan. Kevin Harlan.
Yep, Harlan. It's great.
We're missing Gus Johnson from the mid-late 90s too.
And our guy Tom Hanneman, legit. R.I.P. R.I.P. to Tom Hanneman. Okay, so we have McDonald's All-American, All-NBA Rookie First Team, averaged 12.8 points per game during his career, which brings me to clue number 4. This random wolf of the week has his number retired by his college basketball team. Not always indicative of a great NBA career.
Michael Beasley.
That is not correct.
He was on my list, but I don't know. Is Kansas State hanging that jersey in the rafters?
I'm gonna look.
Did they?
They should, right? He was elite at Kansas State.
Didn't he drag him to an Elite Eight?
I thought so.
I thought he did. This random Wolf of the Week does not have his number retired by any of his 6 NBA teams that he played for.
Okay, another thing here, I'll give you, I guess I'm going to talk this out loud, which will help Kyle too, but I feel like it's harder to get your number retired in college now because if you only play 1 year,
yeah,
there's probably some examples, but, and maybe this is a hint, like guys who played 3 or 4 years and made an impact with their college team.
I love you bringing logic into this because sometimes logic helps in Random Wolf of the Week. Sometimes logic is just a waste of time. This Random Wolf of the Week.
That was a bar. Good work, Ross.
Thank you very much. This Random Wolf of the Week is technically in the Naismith Basketball Hall of Fame.
That does nothing. Everyone is.
Technically,
that's actually kind of why I used it as a clue.
You might as well told me this person breathed oxygen.
Okay, then we move on, Kyle. This Random Wolf of the Week finished his career playing for the Miami Heat.
Mike Miller.
Oh, I love that guess. It's not correct, though.
Oh, it almost came out of my mouth. Good. I don't know if he played for the Heat. And I think we might have done. I'm not control effing this. Is it Wally Zerbiak?
Is this an official guess?
This is an official guess.
It's not correct.
Oh, I'm down to 1 left. Okay.
This Random Wolf of the Week, gentlemen, believe it or not, was born in Angola, New York.
I was going to say, not Mike Miller.
Okay. I'll get on your level here with, is it LaFonso Ellis?
It is not LaFonso Ellis. I think you've used LaFonso a few times. That's an all-time great one, and I think I brought
used him
this
as
up
a
the
heat
last
check
time.
one time, I'm pretty sure.
Okay.
I'm running out of options.
One
We're
stood
both
in
down
line.
to our last guess, by the way.
Yeah.
So the stakes are very high at this point.
Once stood in line for about an hour at a now defunct Best Buy location to get a LaFonso Ellis autograph as a junior high kid, I believe.
Boy. Would you like that hour back of your life? Or are you good?
I think I would. He's doing color work for somebody, I believe.
Well, he was on ESPN for a long time. College.
Was he?
In fact, I think he's been on ESPN's like college basketball game day show for a long time. Didn't he replace Digger Phelps, the highlighter guy? Pretty sure.
Wow, that shows how long it's been since I watched the college football version almost every week. College basketball version, not nearly as much. This Random Wolf of the Week, this should come as no surprise, a first-round draft pick in the NBA.
Wayne Ellington.
You're going to lock in Wayne Ellington for your final guess, which would give Kyle the victory?
Yep.
I'm sorry, that's not correct.
Damn it.
Wait. No, I want to.
We're going to play it out. We're going to play it out.
Earn this, and I want to give me one more clue because there's.
No.
Phil got me onto something now, but okay.
We're going to play it out because it's about to turn. This Random Wolf of the Week played college basketball in the ACC.
Wayne Ellington.
Doubling down on Wayne Ellington.
Can I ask you to repeat the points per game thing? I wrote it down as 12.8.
12.8 points per game.
Oh, man. I don't have any recollection of this guy playing for the Heat, though. But I will use my third guess and say Christian Laettner.
That is correct.
Oh, wow, dude. Wow. Nice job, dude.
Nervous
so he's in the Naismith Hall of Fame as a college player, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So here it's really going to turn because the next clues were we had the Hall of Fame one, correct? Mm-hmm. The next one along those lines, although technically in said Hall of Fame from earlier, this Random Wolf of the Week is the only Olympian from his Olympic team not to be individually inducted. So think about that. That entire dream team is in.
Yeah.
He is not.
Kind of an awkward spot for him.
I just remember that this came up randomly, but I was watching a 30 for 30 and that he was from New York. I thought it was from Buffalo. I don't know where Angola, New York is, but I didn't know Christian Laettner was from New York. So
tell you
also,
what, go ahead.
Sorry, Phil. Played in one Olympic game. Obviously, I think that would have given it away. 55 years young. And as you guys all remember, this Random Wolf of the Week, some would say is very much hated.
One of the most awkward interviews in the history of the old Mackey and Judd radio show on 1500 ESPN. It's probably somewhere in the system.
Oh,
if Ross is in the studio.
Googling this right now.
I don't know if you can. It's from like 10 years ago, maybe 9-10 years ago. It's definitely Ross. I think it's probably in that Zeta system that you're. But it was
Let's
a
see if I
3-minute.
can find any of it.
It was a 3-minute interview, and he came on to promote March Madness, Buffalo Wild Wings March Madness. And the way it works is like you get a guy like that on, and we'll do like 10 or 15 minutes or maybe 20 minutes. We'll throw a plug in at the beginning. We'll plug it at the end. We'll plug your stuff, right?
Yeah.
But there was always this legendary tale that at the end of his run with the Timberwolves, he was just notoriously a cancer behind the scenes. But there was this legendary tale that with media in front of his locker, he pointed around to all of his teammates' lockers and said, loser, 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 till he got to his own locker and said, winner. That's what's wrong around here, right? So I think we asked him one question or maybe two, and now we're 2.5 minutes into this thing. And I said, so Christian, let's put it to bed once and for all. Did this actually happen? Did you actually loser, 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 winner? And he goes, hey guys, I'm all out of time. But if you go to buffalowildwings.com/March Madness, you can catch all the action. buffalowildwings.com/March Madness. Click. 3 minutes.
Ross, you have to find that.
Fortunately, I can't find it in this moment, but I will do my due diligence to dig it up. I did find a Christian Laettner laugh that's about 3 seconds long. I suppose you wanted to hear that after I set that up. Here's what we got.
Yeah.
Anytime I see a Kentucky fan wearing a shirt that says, I still hate Laettner, I laugh a little bit.
That's it. He doesn't even laugh. Sorry.
To close the loop on how I knew he was from New York, because I was at the gym the other day, and the 30 for 30 I Hate Christian Laettner was on, and I forgot this. But if you go back and
It's
rewatch
so
it,
good.
Oh my god, it's so good. But also, there's like a real thing where Phil, maybe you can pull this up. I don't know who was the GM or the coach of the Wolves at the time that they drafted Christian Laettner.
Okay,
but that person had like reached out to Coach K and was like, "Yo, this guy is a little different," and like. Coach K was talking about basically advising who was ever working for the Wolves at the time about, you got to let Christian be Christian a little bit. So, yeah, that is one of the more interesting. He's on the Julius Randle spectrum, right? Of like very
super talented, but just a little different. So Jimmy Rogers was the head coach who got fired, and then Sid Lowe took over.
It was Sid Lowe was like talking to Coach K about what do I do with this.
Yeah,
borderline malcontent.
Didn't Sid Lowe played on that NC State team, the Jim Valvano team. Mm-hmm. So I'm guessing they were in the same conference at the time as Duke, right? So I think he knew Coach K from just competing and whatnot. But yeah, man.
Wow. Hey, you know what bugs me too? And this bugs me, but I've realized since then that I was wrong. But if I can give you one Vikings take, so Vikings Lions the other night, they had Chauncey Billups in the arena, but like he was like Mr. Piston. Or Mr. like obviously Mr. Piston, you won a title there, but did you see that? I mean, I'm so dumb, but I was like, man, I kind of thought you were riding with us. Like that's not fair.
Oh yeah, well, I mean, we launched his career,
He won a title there though, right?
I feel that's what's going with like, yeah, you're a Piston, but like, not. I mean, dude, like, not really right now.
You didn't have to be there. That was rude. It hurt my feelings because I think of Chauncey as one of the best Timberwolves ever.
I'd love that you thought of that, Kyle. Do you know what my first thought was? And I know this is kind of mean-spirited, but my first thought was Father Time remains undefeated. Chauncey looks old.
Hey,
really?
Listen,
I feel like, I don't know, man.
He looks old.
Have you seen who the Blazers throw out there in their 8-man rotation? He's aging rapidly.
Who's that?
Was it no?
Yeah, who's that?
Wait, what?
The Blazers, what do you mean?
Like, did I miss something? Isn't Chauncey Billups coaching the Blazers?
Yeah. No, I thought you were talking about someone in their 8-man rotation.
No, like the Blazers stink, and he's got to coach those guys every time. Wow,
I thought you were going to refer to like someone who looks old in the Blazers 8-man rotation. I'm like, is Greg Oden still there? I don't know. What's happening?
Guys, that's all the time I have for today. Please go to buffalowildwings.com.
/March Madness.
We did you no favors. Sorry, buddy.
Just hanging Kyle out to dry. Hopefully you guys enjoyed your Motor City Minute here today as well. He's Kyle. I'm Phil. And this is a Timberwolves Lifestyle Podcast.